Okay, it is live streaming and recording.
Probably give it like one more minute.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We're just gonna wait a minute for a couple more people to attend, and then we'll get started. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending the second webinar in the Creating Accessible Presentations feature and tool series. This one is about features and tools. My name is Megan Selmer. I am the Web and Usability Assistant at the National Network for Equitable Library Service, or NNELS, and I am part of the Public Library Accessibility Resource Center, or PLARC project. Joining me today are Melody Shee and Toby Duggan. They are both amazing accessibility testers at NNELS. So just a quick note, and some housekeeping before I start. This presentation will be both recorded and live streamed. And we have enabled the captions if you would like to use them. We will have a question period at the end of the presentation. If you could minimize the use of chat to just questions, because it can be quite distracting to screen reader users. And we will stop the recording prior to the question period. If you did not attend the first webinar in the series, the slides are available on Accessible Libraries, and the link will be available in the chat to those. Awesome. So I'm going to begin today with a land acknowledgement. Our presenters today come from across this land, living and working in what we now know as Canada. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples and will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. We respectfully ask for you all to take a moment to acknowledge the lands on which you reside. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got a lot of information to cover, so I'm just going to dive right in. The first tool or feature that we're going to talk about today is tables. We recommend that you avoid them in general. Tables they should be only used for tabular data, but they present information. The information they present is quite small on a presentation. But if you love tables, if you must use tables, we have a few recommendations to make them accessible. So first, you need to mark up the header row. This lets screen readers know how they will read the table and lets them know which column they're in if the header row is marked up. To do that, when you create a table in PowerPoint, you just need to ensure that the header row checkbox is selected, and that's under the table design toolbar option. We recommend you don't use a fixed layout because these will not adjust to different screen sizes, and so the information will run off the page. Don't use merge cells. Don't have blank cells. If you have cells that you don't want to add information to, we just recommend you add a dash or an N/A. And like we discussed in the first webinar, if you use a table, the text needs to be as large as possible and in a sans serif font. So the information should be readable by everyone. Okay, so transitions and animations. We also recommend you avoid using these as well. They don't communicate anything important to the presentation. They can be distracting and make people sick, or depending on a person. Yeah, and they can be used in some situations to help a viewer focus on the text. Like say you're talking and you have 3 columns of text and you talk about the first one and then the next one shows up. So the animations are helpful then when there's too much text on the slide, but as we talked about in the first webinar, what we really would recommend there is not use animation, but rather have 3 separate slides. So the information can be large and visible. Okay, drawing and annotations. Okay, again, sorry. We suggest you avoid using these, both when you create your slides and during your presentation. These are really inaccessible and often difficult to see, especially when you're done during the presentation. I was talking earlier about, say, if I wanted to annotate or highlight the title, like that is that's inaccessible, right? Because if you're using a screen reader, you won't know that I highlighted that unless I describe it really well. And it's also using only color to convey a meaning of something, which is inaccessible. If you do use drawings or annotations, you need to add alt text descriptions to these and tables. Sorry, I forgot to mention that on that slide. But we are talking about alt text description next week. That is in alt text and captions. That's all we're talking about next week. So I will tell you more about that then. Okay, so what should you use? Captions and subtitles. So Google Slides and PowerPoint let you add captions to your presentation. If you're presenting in person, we suggest you use the captions and subtitles that Google Slides and PowerPoint provide. Or if possible, provide an American Sign Language interpreter. That's the ideal, but if it's not possible, captions are a good second option. Don't use 2 captions. So for example, I'm using a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't have those captions on because I'm using Zoom captions for this webinar. And if you are posting your presentation, if you've recorded them, we highly recommend that you edit your captions, like fast speakers or people with accents, or acronyms, like there's a lot of errors in captions. And so before you post it, we recommend editing them. So let's talk about how you enable subtitles and captions. Excuse me. So in PowerPoint, just begin a slideshow and click on the CC icon on the bottom left of the screen. And that will turn on the PowerPoint captions. PowerPoint has a lot of really great settings for their captions. So you can determine what they look like the size of the text, the type of text used, the language. So that's really nice to be able to, if you want to speak in English and have the subtitles in French, is a really great option in PowerPoint. And enabling subtitles and captions in Google Slides, it's the same kind of method. So you start the slideshow, and then in Google Slides, you click on the More option or 3 vertical dots at the bottom left side of the screen. And then you select Captions Preferences and choose Toggle Captions. Also Google Slides does have keyboard shortcuts. So on Windows, it's Control F5, and on a Mac, it's Command Shift C if you just want to toggle the Google Slide captions on and off. We will note that Google Slides just supports captions in English right now. Notes and comments. So if you use notes and comments in PowerPoint, Keynote, and Google Slides, you can We recommend you use a larger text, use a sans serif font, and consider the contrast between the text and the background. So in Google Slides and PowerPoint, the background is a light gray, and then in Keynote, it's white. So a black font should work. The color contrast between those backgrounds and text if the text was black would work. Comments can be accessible. If you really need to use them, go for it. It's just the text is really small in comments, so you need to magnify it. And if you export your document, the comments like into a PDF, the comments don't always export with them. So if you're relying on that, or when you export, they might not be accessible. So just something to keep in mind if you're exporting, which is what we're going to talk about next. So accessible handouts. We recommend providing accessible handouts for your presentation always prior to your presentation. For example, for this webinar series, we include an HTML, a PDF, a doc, like Word file, and a PPT or a PowerPoint file for anyone who wants to review the slides before the webinar. Generally, HTML is the best way to go. This does require some extra steps to create your document. But at the same time, PDFs are generally not accessible, and to make them accessible require a lot of extra steps as well. So let's talk about, sorry. So talking about PDFs, I'm not going to cover it a lot. That can be its own webinar series, quite frankly. So for example, when I created the PDF of these slides, like I exported into PDF and then I had to go into Adobe, and there were so many things wrong with it that I spent a couple of hours trying to fix it and make it accessible. So for example, the reading order that we'll talk about in the slides a little bit later was incorrect in the PDF. So like the title of slide 5 was read before the contents of slide 3. Right? Just because you create the PDF doesn't mean it actually is in the reading order or as you expect it. Other issues when you create a PDF include improperly tagged content. So like all the lists in this PowerPoint were, I would say 20-30% of them were paragraphs instead of lists, and then nested paragraphs inside of lists. So it's just, yes. So it's a long story to say, PDFs can be great, but they require a lot of work. And so we recommend HTML doc or the PowerPoint file. All right, so we recommend HTML. So we'll talk a little bit about creating an HTML document from your Power presentation program. So you can create create an HTML document directly from PowerPoint. It requires a few steps. So first you need to export the presentation in the rich text format, or RTF, and then you open it in your preferred word processor. I write reformatting may be required. It will most probably definitely be required just to ensure that it's marked up properly, like the lists are lists and the paragraphs are paragraphs. Accessible Libraries has a really great creating accessible documents checklist that you can use when reformatting. And then once you've done that, you can just save it as a web page. In some circumstances, you may also have to edit the HTML document, which is also another webinar series, because sometimes Word doesn't save it properly, but that will still be better than an inaccessible PDF. Okay, so creating an HTML document in Google Slides in Keynote. Google Slides is pretty similar to PowerPoint. You can't do it, you can publish it to the web, which creates an HTML version of your slides, which is great. The permissions depends on your account. So they might be public, they might be private, they might be shared with just people who you're connected with. So that's something to take into consideration. If you want to create a document that you can hand out, it follows the same kind of procedure as PowerPoint, but we'll just talk about right now. So to publish the slides to the web, you just select File, Share, publish to web, and then embed link or copy link, and then you can set it to who you would like to see it. The other method would be exporting the PowerPoint into a text format, so a TXT format, and then editing it in your word processor and saving it as a web page. In Keynote, which is great, you can export your slides as an HTML document. So you select File, Export to HTML, and then click on Next, and then Save. And this downloads a folder with just a bunch of stuff like the text that you've decided to use, your images, things like that. To open it, there's an index.html file in the folder. And so if you click on that, that will open in your preferred browser and it will be your slides. Okay, so the next step, let's talk about the PowerPoint Accessibility Checker. This is an excellent tool in PowerPoint. To access it, you click on the review toolbar and select Check Accessibility. We would really like to emphasize it does not catch everything. As lovely as it is, it doesn't catch all the errors. It wouldn't catch like using a sans serif font versus a serif font, or like formatting errors or anything like that. So what it checks for are errors, warnings, and tips. So errors are things like missing alt text, images that are not in line. If your slides don't have titles, it'll check for that. Warnings are if there's insufficient color contrast, if any video or audio doesn't have captions, things like that. And then tips are just like you should add a slide title, and this should be unique, and it should be defined as the heading of the title. It's very helpful, but yeah. Okay, so one of the big things that I've mentioned a little bit in this webinar and the last is the slide reading order. So when I say that, what I'm talking about is that each element on one side of a slide is one item. So, and the items are organized into a specific reading order. And the reading order changes as you edit. So for example, the reading order of this slide would be the title, the text box, the page number, right? That's the correct reading order. This can get swapped around when you start editing your slides. So how to edit the reading order in PowerPoint. So from the Home toolbar, you click on the icon Arrange, and then the bottom option in the drop-down menu is Selection Pane, and that brings up how you change the reading order. So let me just quickly. Okay, so there's an image on this slide of the PowerPoint selection pane. It shows the reading order of the slide items in this slide. It is a column with black text and gray and white lines. The reading order in PowerPoint is organized from bottom to the top, with the item lowest in the list read first. So this slide reading order is Title 7 would be the title. Content placeholder 11 is the image. Text box 3 would be the caption, which says the reading order of this slide. Slide placeholder or content placeholder 9, apologies, is the text. So from the Home toolbar, that text that tells you how to get to the selection pane. And then slide number placeholder 3 is 15, is the slide number. So it's a little like, and there's eye icons next to each option. So it's a little unintuitive that the thing that is read first is at the bottom, but I mean, you get the hang of it eventually. To move these around, to move the order around, you just drag and drop. Okay, so editing the slide reading order is a little bit more difficult in Google Slides and Keynote. So you can't see the order of the options. What you have to do is first you go to in both programs, you kind of click on the topmost left option and then tab through it. And as you tab through it, it'll highlight the container, the box that the information is in. And that's how you can get the order. If something's out of order, say the page number or the slide number is read before the text, you have to arrange it differently. So you, in Google Slides, you choose arrange, order, and then you choose an option. So bring it to the front, bring it to the back. So in that case, like clicking on the text box, selecting arrange, order, and then I would say bring forward, right? Because you want the text to, the title to be first, but you want it to be before the slide number. And then it's the same kind of thing in Keynote. So you click on arrange in the top menu, or if the toolbar on the right is open, there's an option there to do this, and then choose the option like send backwards or send forward. Okay, that was a lot of information. Toby is now going to take it away and provide us with a demonstration.
All right. Hello, I'm just going to share my not letting me. Oh, it's not letting me. Oh, here we go. It's not letting me share my screen. There we go. Can everyone, you can see that? All right, I'm hoping so.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, so this is just for demonstration purposes. Megan had provided this to me like last weekend. Just at the beginning, I'm just going to apologize if I don't want to repeat myself, but just for folks who weren't here last week, I have a visual impairment. I'm quite nearsighted. So I'm wearing contact lenses and glasses right now. And like all of you, I've spent a lot of time in presentations, and I have some experience as a presenter in a lot of different venues. And so there is a certain amount of frustration where at an event where I'm not able to see the presentation slides, but I also understand how challenging it can be to create slides that meet the needs of everyone who might be in attendance. And I have to say that when I go to a presentation or an event where I know there's going to be some lecture content on a screen, it's my responsibility to sit close. I don't mind having to do that. Sometimes you still can't see them, and that can be frustrating. But I just want to say that I'm not presenting this like I'm some bitter person that expects. I don't expect I should be able to see things from the back row if that's the only seat that's available to me. So these transitions and animations. Needless to say, though I'm going to say it anyway, they don't serve a great deal of purpose. For me, from an accessibility point of view, I'm really solely thinking about this as an attendee at a live event, and I can say that the serif font and there's an absence of contrast here for my eye. Particularly the headings in the blue font is a challenge to see. I don't know if you can see my pointer on the screen right now, but I actually, at any kind of distance, the lines, it's not that they bled together, but it's hard to read things separately. Like there's not enough definition. There's not enough distinction between the various lines under buildings and spaces and collections. I'm looking at speaking under the first column here. And I have to say that, I'm going to post, I've taken all that content from the last slide, and I've just copied and pasted it into our Nels template, which is more accessible. It's got you can see that the font is slightly larger. It's definitely black on white. It's sharper contrast. It's if you have time to, I would be able to read this on a screen. It's a little challenging to focus on, especially if I think like a lot of people in my position, if you're say you want to write notes while you're going along, it can be looking back up at the screen. Sometimes it's hard to find your place. It's nuanced. It's difficult to describe. So my thing back to the transitions and further to what Megan was saying, and I'm sure you're aware of this, that you can definitely your slides can benefit from, your presentation can benefit from putting these points in one at a time, and it gives you the opportunity to discuss each of the items under each of the 3 columns. I'll say that I didn't realize until I blew this slide up that there's a line in the background there that I think is part of the template. And if that was heavier, it would divide the columns. That would be helpful as well, but I couldn't get rid of it either. So I'd like to think that this all around would benefit everyone the way I've laid it out now. I bumped up the all around the font. It raised it to a 22 point for all the body text, and obviously the heading in the top is, for those who can read it, it is significantly larger. I bolded as much text as I could to draw attention to headings, and I also made the bullets darker as well, or it's not darker, but I mean they're more prominent. And I'll say that, even if, not to continue banging on about the same point, but I would say that it's easier to read, going back to the template that this presentation was made in. It's easier to read this white on green, my eye anyway, than it is on our nicely accessible Nell's template here with, I just made all the font black and bold. But I could definitely read this. I think they're safe to say that people who are fully sighted could probably read this from the back of the room. It's pretty large. The next item, and this, I'm not sure why this template has these green bars on the back of it. This next item, though, I don't know about this transition, but with the way the slide came into focus there, it merged. But I'm just going to say this table example has the distinction of being unreadable in any format for me. I would have a struggle with this in print. Even I'm looking at a fairly large computer screen, and it's all right. But in a classroom or in any kind of a presentation, this would be challenging on a number of points. I find the alternating gray on white, I encounter this a lot on websites, and it is very I don't know why it doesn't provide enough definition, and also that the rows are divided, but the columns, everything's kind of floating. It's not neatly justified. I don't know if it's more of an aesthetic thing or if it's really eyesight, but it's very challenging to read. Again, the serif font, the further you are away from it, to the more the trickier it is to see. So all I really did here was, surprise, make everything bold and larger. And I grabbed the corner of the table and just pulled it, so that everything was larger. What I would have really preferred is if I could have made the table rows, the borders, if I could have added some black lines. That I also find really helpful, but for some reason it just would not would not do it. And that's, it's not necessarily earth shattering. That's really about all I have to say about the examples that I have here. Again, when I go to a presentation, I anticipate that I'm going to have to sit in the front. I would like to think that some of the changes I made to these were actually, benefit everyone. Like I've noticed that recently I was talking to one of my colleagues here. We were at a presentation at a conference, and it was sort of a surprise. There were some presentation slides that someone speaking. I wasn't expecting them. And I said afterwards, oh man, I couldn't see this table. And they said to me, yeah, I couldn't see them either, which is, I don't think there necessarily was a bad slide. It was just where I was, and because I wasn't prepared for it. And in those situations, I can, I'll pull out a phone and take a photo of it, or in that case, a tablet with me, which is workable. But all this to say that I go into it expecting that everyone else can see, and it's interesting when someone else tells me that, yeah, they can't see it either, and they would have benefited from the graphics being clear. And that's really all I've had to share with you today. Really, thanks for listening to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Toby. Melody, would you like to demonstrate next? What?
Oh, I'm gonna stop share.
Okay, give me just a split of a second. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's hope that it works. There we go.
Meeting controls window. Meeting controls Dr. Alert.
Anyone see my screen by any chance?
Rate 100.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Rate
Okay.
80.
And I'm gonna
70.
slow down my
PPT.
thing.
Features. Inaccessible presentation line features tools. PPTX 3 of 3.
All right. Let's start with.
Participants can now see your screen alert.
Cool. Thanks for providing my screen reader. We're gonna start with supposedly inaccessible presentation. Let's hope that Megan actually does a worse job this time.
Listen, I try really hard
Yeah.
to make them bad.
So
Slideshow dash slide 1
let's
left
see how
parent.
bad this can be.
An inaccessible presentation : features and tools.
Okay. So I can see the title here.
This is for demonstration purposes. ...
But like obviously it doesn't tell me, like nothing here ever tells me, oh, this is actually the title, but I'm just gonna assume that the first thing there, it's the title.
March 23rd, 2023. March 23rd, 2023.
And I see like nothing else on this slide, so I'm just gonna assume there's nothing else. I don't actually know.
Slideshow slide 2. Transitions and
Alright.
animations. Transitions and animations. Transitions and animations.
And here I move on to the second slide. It shows me it's about transition and animation. And I don't really have an opinion on whether or not you should use them, since I can't see it anyway. I think it's very pointless, but hey, if you like to have your things look pretty, I don't really have a problem with it. For the most part, screen readers just ignore them. I don't really know that they exist. I kind of have to go out of my way to find out if they're there. And the only time that I would need to do anything, like to have anything to do with it, is if I were to please the eyeballs and create a presentation myself that includes all these fancy stuff, in which, I'm not a huge fan of, but once in a while, I just have to do something like that.
Accessible libraries.
Let's see what else is here.
Bullet what they need to consider.
Okay. It looks like a list that's not a list.
Bullet building and spaces. Bullet collections. Bullet library programming. Bullet website. Bullet legislation. Accessible formats. EPUB.
Okay. And that looks.
Accessible
the
formats.
only way that I can tell that it may not be like the same little group of things is by is to know that there is no like bullet in front of like
EPUB. Accessible formats.
accessible format, for example. And
EPUB. DAISY.
this
MP
is
Docs. Rich. Great resources.
a
Bullet.
fairly
Accessibility.
long
Bullet creating captions. Bullet creating bullet.
list. And like for just to have like the minimum amount of stuff on your screen, and like I personally don't really care. But to minimize the amount of things you have on your screen, like ideally you want to split all these into like, I don't know, maybe 3 different slides. I don't know. But that's all I see on this slide, and let's try to move on. So I click on page down. I don't know what this is doing, but it's not bringing me to the next slide.
Sorry, Melly, you know what it's doing? It's doing the animations now.
Okay,
So, yeah.
See, this is the worst part. I can't
Bullet
even
access- bullet
move on to the next slide. That's so is the animation like, does it like last a while, or how does it work?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I think if you go
Okay.
through 3
Do I
or
have to
4
go
more
through this?
times.
Slideshow. Slide
There
3.
we go.
Learn more
There
Okay.
we go.
So the first time I opened this file, I tried a few times and I was like, why does it just not let me go to the next slide? And I was like, did you only send me something with 2 slides in there? And I checked the actual thing from where I can like edit everything and all that, and I see like there are multiple, like there are way more stuff after that. And so yeah, animations, they're useless. Don't put them there. I changed my mind. Don't ignore what I said before about like I don't really care about them. Yeah, I do. They're kind of in my way. Like if you want like pretty pictures, go ahead. They label them. Make sure they're actually meaningful. But animations, if you need animations to catch your audience attention, I'm sorry, you're probably not giving a very good presentation anyway. All right, let's look at the slide.
Learn more about reading systems.
Learn more about reading system.
Learn more about reading. Learn more about reading
I
systems.
see nothing
Learn more
else.
about reading systems.
What is supposed to be on this page?
It is a
Alert.
table.
Okay.
And that's a merge cell. And it's
Mm.
so right now, like because the animation makes the table appear, the table's not on the screen. So
I see.
until you go through the animation. Yeah. And it's just a really bad look. I'm just gonna say that I made a way worse presentation.
I love it. This is a very much a better way to present
Learn more about reading systems.
an inaccessible PowerPoint.
Slideshow. Slide 4. Inaccessible reading.
Right. As always, the animation didn't really do anything, and I saw nothing else besides the title. And this slide, it's even
Slideshow complete. Slideshow complete.
Okay, there's
Slideshow complete.
nothing. I literally see
Slideshow.
nothing
Slide 4.
on
Inaccessible.
this one either.
Slideshow complete.
And now it just shows me that the slideshow is done. And we're gonna move on to
Inaccessible presentation feed.
the
PPT win.
good presentation.
Features. Accessible presentation.
It'll be
Pane. Accessible present.
identical, except better.
Slide 1. Slideshow. Slide 1. This is for demonstration purposes. March 23rd. March 23rd. 2020.
As always, the first slide, there's nothing
Slideshow.
special about it.
Transitions and animations.
Transitions
Accessible
and
libraries.
animations.
Bullet what to need. Bullet building and spaces. Bullet collections. Bullet legislation. Accessible formats.
The thing is that I can't really tell if
Accessible present.
yeah, okay. I can't really tell if these are like a proper list or they're just like the bullets. Because they look kind of the same as the other one.
Bullet
So
bullet doc
maybe
slash
they're just supposed to be like this. I don't really know how it was done.
Yeah, it's just the list without the animations. I should have made it into 3
Okay.
slides. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because I don't know if I can really tell if these are like an actual list or if it's like you actually type the bullet character. I don't really
No, that's an
think there is a.
actual list, but
Huh,
I wonder if it's because it's in a column. It's three
Um,
columns.
I don't really know. But if it being three column was important by any chance, I would not know either. So, wow. Um, this is supposedly a very accessible presentation. So the problem is that to find a bunch of these like semantic list or link for headings, that's kind of not what is available by default. It's kind of like always deep down and somewhere in your setting you have to like dig into them when you're creating in formats like PowerPoint or PDFs. So that is why we're saying that HTML, even though is like a little bit more of a technical solution, but it's definitely easier to create an accessible format. You don't have to go out of your way. It's unless you try hard, it's easier to make it accessible by default.
Bullet rich text format. Art
Okay,
bullet rate resources.
let's look at
Training resource. Bullet checklist.
this
Bullet
list.
guideline. Bullet video recordings. Accessibility resources. Bullet accessible books. Bullet creating captions.
Okay,
Bullet creating captions.
and that's the end of this slide.
Slideshow slide 3. Learn more about reading systems. Learn
And
more about
let's see. Oh yeah, see, no more animations. Love it.
iOS. Android.
And I can actually read everything that's on
Windows.
this slide.
Mac OS. Apple Books. Easy Reader from Dolphin. Bookshelf from Vital Source. Book Reader. EPUB. MP3 audiobooks. EPUB. Text. And Daisy. Text and audio. EPUB. Text and PDF. EPUB. Text. PDF.
Okay.
Doc. RTF. Plain text. And HTML. Chapter navigation and page navigation. Read out loud and review text.
So I'm going down
Activate links and read image descriptions.
line by lines. I don't really know if there's a way for me to tell if like how things are placed, how they're supposed to look.
Navigate tables and visual adjustment. Visual adjustment.
And also I don't think I've ever seen a proper table on PowerPoint, so don't even bother using them. Just there are too many things to avoid. Let's just not use PowerPoint.
Inaccessible reading order. The Accessible Libraries
Um,
homepage. The Accessible Libraries homepage.
Okay.
Recently added
the
resources.
Last
Search resources.
thing here, I believe.
Find out about upcoming events. Learn about our current studies. Content placeholder. The homepage of accessiblelibraries.ca. The logo. Connected differing colored mountainous triangles.
we see
Blue,
that
purple,
there's,
teal, red, and yellow.
Very long descriptions of like what's going on here. The image.
Content placeholder. The homepage of accessible content.
But I believe that's all.
Inaccessible reading order. The accessible slideshow slide 3. Inaccessible
Yeah.
slideshow complete.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm not missing anything. Am I correct?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. So did you have a table in there?
I did, yeah, and it
It
just didn't-
doesn't show as a proper table. So I
Hmm.
don't know if it's just me not knowing how to use them properly, but looking at it from like the slide view, there's basically no, like it's just text.
Yeah, that's well, we highly recommend you don't use tables in your PowerPoint presentation.
We recommend you don't use PowerPoint.
Awesome. Anything
Great.
else, Melody?
I think that's it. I showed you how terrible PowerPoints can be and how much info we're missing out on, regardless of your hard work on making it look nice. We're not getting it. So, yeah, I think that's all.
Accessible
Thank
press
you very
accessible
much.
PowerPoint. Accessible
How do we stop my thing?
from Alex Krakus to PPT meeting controls. Meeting control.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll just quickly share my screen, but it is question time. So first, thank you for attending the second webinar in the Creating Accessible presentation series. The next webinar is Images, Videos, and Graphics, where we'll talk all about alt text and captions on your videos and audio media, is on March 30th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific. Right, I'm just going to quickly stop the recording and then we will get to questions.